Welcome to r/malicious compliance, where we share stories of people conforming to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. Today, we have 3 great stories, so subscribe, hit the like button, and let's begin. The first story. Neighbor wanted the fence fixed. We just removed the fence. This happened to my friend a couple months ago. Him and his wife just moved into their first house about 6 months ago. Then a strong windstorm came through and damaged their fence. And by damage their fence, I mean the fence was now leaning slightly, leaning about 70 degrees. Because home insurance won't fix the fence, plus it being winter. My friend and his wife were going to wait until spring to hire someone to replace their fence. Well, their backyard neighbor did not like that. The backyard neighbor wanted the fence fixed ASAP. When the neighbor found out they were going to wait until spring, the neighbor called the city and complained that their fence was out of code. When the city inspector came out to inspect their fence, it was in fact out of code and needed to be corrected. Now, the reason the neighbor was so fixated on the fence being replaced is because the neighbor has a pool in their yard and need to have a fence around their pool for safety. Well, my friend and his wife, now pissed off at their neighbor, decided to only remove the fence and not replace it. This allows them to be in city code. And now, when the spring hits, the neighbor's going to need to build a fence on their backside of their yard if they want to fill up their pool for the summer. If the neighbor would have just been nice and not called the city, like a Karen, my friend would have built the fence in the spring with no problem. The second story. So you need a man's brain to do all of that? Okay. First, context. Since I, male 28, was 11, my parents are divorced. My mother, female 64, got custody, and we would see our father one weekend every 2 weeks. I have also a little sister, female 25, so I ended up being the only man in the house. Growing up, our mother always taught us that we needed to participate in house duties, such as washing the dishes, taking out the laundry, preparing food. We would take turns, and during the week, us children would take care of all that, because our mother would come back from work exhausted and expected to not have anything to do once at home. And we were kind of okay with that. Only that as young children, we would sometimes, often, forget to do stuff, and it would cause a fight. But we ended up learning not to forget. Only, there are some tasks that wouldn't be fairly distributed. My mother always needed a man close so that she could give him some work to do. And even though she never remarried and only dated 1 or 2 men after she divorced, she always found some male friend or some friend's husband, boyfriend, to whom she could ask for help. Until at some point, people started to realize that she was being close to them for the only purpose that she could ask them for help. Yeah, she's one of those tit-for-tat persons, where if she does something for you, you have to give back something equivalent, or you disappear from her life. So basically, she lost a few friends. But at some point, I was old enough to be useful, and she started asking me for help on those matters. OP, the internet box doesn't work anymore. Can you look it up? It needs a man's brain to understand that. OP, I bought some furniture from IKEA. Can you build it for me? It needs a man's brain to understand that. OP, can you carry luggages? Only a strong man can do that. OP, can you look up why my computer is being so slow? It needs a man's brain to understand that. And so on. I asked her repeatedly that she looked at how I dealt with these things so that she could understand herself and fix it alone next time. Especially when it was something so basic as to restart the internet box. But she didn't want to learn. She just wanted me to do it because she didn't want to have to deal with it herself. And it went on for a few years, growing from just restarting the box to piercing onto walls so she could hang mirrors and stuff. For info, I never did anything of all that before she asked me to do it. So I guess it made me learn it, which is a good thing. But what bothered me was that she just didn't care and expected me to do all this because it was normal. And me knowing about it or not was not a question. I'm a man, so that's my job. And as I was growing up, and her still not learning anything, I got more and more frustrated until this one final time. I don't remember what specific task it was, where she told me that it was a man's job, needing a man's brain. I had a huge sigh, did the job, and went back to my business. Cue the malicious compliance. As some tasks require a man's brain, it is obvious that some others require a woman's touch. As we men are all about technique, big thinking, and strength work. So the following days, I started to wash the dishes and put them back anywhere in the kitchen. Because us men have no idea about where goes what in the house. We just fix things and carry heavy stuff. I forgot to get food back in the fridge because that's already cooked, so it won't spoil.
overcooked my steaks, eggs, pizza, because I was so busy thinking about all of these technique stuff that I didn't have the brain space to think about checking food. Laundry would be spread to dry, one piece onto another, because it is more efficient as it saves space. And about cleaning the house, let's just say it was a waste of time because I could perfectly live in my own mess. Of course, it didn't take long for my mother to get angry at me for not taking care of the house, or for doing it so stupidly. To which I answered, sorry, it needs a woman's brain to understand how to take care of a house correctly. Which, yes, is totally sexist. But so is saying that all the work she'd made me do was for men only. So at first, she was dumbfounded. Then the storm unleashed. It still is one of the biggest fights we've had to this day. Things calmed down, and I went back to caring properly, until she asked me for my man's brain again. From this point, I stopped caring. I would forget the laundry in the washing machine, let the dishes pile up in the sink, and I would only do my man's job. She would still get really angry, ordering me to do stuff, which I would ultimately do, completely half-assed, meaning that she had to do it all over after me because half of the dishes were just out on the kitchen, not at their place. Laundry was all stuck together to dry, and so on. Mood in the house was tensed, and it wouldn't need much for a fight to blow up, until at some point she asked me to help her do this or that, not to do it for her anymore. So I helped. I showed her how to do it. I took time for it. We did it together multiple times until she finally learned how to do it. I then started taking care of my duties as I did before, and things went back to normal. Finally. The third story. Want me to speak to your insurance? Sure. Enjoy an at-fault claim on your policy. I work as an auto insurance adjuster for simple claims. For some background, one of the most complicated type of claims that I deal with are backing claims, like a person backing out of a space or similar. This is because backing claims have a potential for shared responsibility, depending on location of damage, statements, and so on. Typically, for backing claims, it is crucial to take a very specific statement from both drivers, to see the scene, even if virtually, and review the damage on both cars to determine liability. I received a claim, CV backed into IV. This means the claimant or other person backed into my person. Usually, in most backing claims, there is a claim opened on both insurance companies so they can do their own investigation. Additionally, there's a process for billing the other company once liability has been determined. So, insurance companies often speak during this process. It was day 5 for me, and I haven't been able to reach either my insured or the claimant after several texts, calls, and emails to both parties. My last call attempt for the day to the claimant, and I got an answer. I was immediately cut off before I could even finish introducing myself. She essentially stated that she will not speak to me at all, and that I'll have to speak to her insurance. I asked if she had an open claim and a claim number to save me the trouble, and she stated, I am not in a place to provide you that at this time. I briefly mentioned just wanting to take her statement and that her insurance would want to do the same, but she doubled down, and she told me that she will absolutely not speak to me before disconnecting the call. Okay, fine. I then found her insurance company, confirmed she hadn't opened a claim yet, then opened a claim on her behalf. I disclosed the information that I knew, location of damage on both cars, and the original facts of loss, claimant backed into my insured. Her insurance agreed with me over the phone that it sounded like the claimant was most likely at fault, but obviously they will do their own investigation. Location of damage alone paints a very clear picture. Damage on the claimant rear bumper and damage to my insured rear door is typically always 100% at fault on the backing party because they owe the greater duty to yield right of way and to maintain proper lookout. Fast forward an hour and I got a call from my insured. She told me she had been speaking with the claimant for several days and they were negotiating an out-of-pocket solution. Now this is normal and some people do this, but if the claimant had just told me this in the first place, I wouldn't have had to file an at-fault claim on her insurance. If you know anything about insurance, the claimant's ultimate goal was to avoid her premiums from going up. But now she will have an at-fault claim on her policy that will certainly taint her records. Enjoy. I hope you enjoyed these stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more stories like this.